Okay, welcome to Chapter 9. This is going to be one of the toughest chapters that we do, but hopefully I've got enough videos and animations to help this work. So Chapter 9 is going to be about how we get energy from the glucose that we eat. So how those glucose molecules and all that potential energy stored in there gets transferred into kinetic energy to power different things in our bodies. So obviously the place that we're getting our glucose is going to be from photosynthetic organisms, and we call those autotrophs. So if you see in this picture here, this is going to be an example of autotrophs, right? You've got the tree and the grass, and they're doing photosynthesis in order to harness energy from the sun. And one of the end products is going to be glucose that we need to ingest, and that's the base of any food chain is photosynthetic activity. Now, anything that cannot make its own energy is going to be called a heterotroph. So that could be like a frog, a bird, or it could be even us, right? So enjoy those. Those are my pictures from Costa Rica. But anyway, these are all going to be examples of heterotrophs because they cannot make their own energy. And we are the same way. Any animal, fungus, anything like that that cannot just sit out in the sun and photosynthesize is going to be a heterotroph. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to eat things that have the glucose in them, and when we digest that, we are going to break it down into smaller pieces, and eventually we're going to break it down so much that we can actually extract the energy from those glucose molecules. And so that process is going to be called cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is actually going to be harvesting energy from glucose and using that to power the stuff that we're going to be needing it to do. So the overall process is right here. This is going to be the equation, and you can see that C6H12O6, that's going to be glucose, and then oxygen is going to give us carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP and heat. Now we're going to lose some energy as heat in the process, but we'll talk about that as we get further into it. So there's a couple of types of cellular respiration. The one that we're going to concentrate on the most in here is going to be aerobic respiration. And that's going to be when the acceptor molecule is going to be oxygen. Now what I mean by acceptor molecule is that we're going to have a whole bunch of electrons that are going to be hopping from place to place. That's what's keeping us alive. And eventually they have to end somewhere. And so in aerobic respiration, they're going to end at the oxygen, and that's the whole reason that we breathe in oxygen. So that's going to be the one that we're going to concentrate on the most. Now, the other types are going to be anaerobic respiration, and that's going to be when you have an electron acceptor molecule that is an inorganic molecule. So remember, inorganic means no carbon. And that's going to be stuff that like anaerobic bacteria can do. We don't really do this. And then the last one is going to be fermentation. And fermentation is going to be where that acceptor molecule is an organic molecule. And this can happen in a couple of different organisms. This can happen in us, and we'll talk about how that can happen in us a little later. And then also yeast do it, and we use that to our advantage to make bread and cheese, and of course, the most important thing, alcohol, right? So that's how we do fermentation. So ATP is going to be the energy currency of a cell, and you've seen some pictures of it. I've got a couple here that you can take a look at. There it is. And the really important thing about ATP that you want to remember is that it has those three phosphates connected to each other, and they each have a negative charge. And so what that means is negatives are going to repel each other. So this bond on this third phosphate is really strong because it's almost like pushing a spring that wants to be extended all the way together. And so when we break this bond right here, that's going to release a ton of energy, and that's how we're going to get energy from the ATP. So there's a couple of reasons why we would want to use ATP. One of them is going to be for muscle contractions. So real simple, you see this guy contracting his muscles, right? That's going to be using ATP to do that. Another example is going to be active transport. So in a cell, when we want to move something against the concentration gradient, you're going to see that bright thing coming up right there. That's going to be ATP that's used to allow something to go against its concentration gradient. Another reason that we could use it is to do chemical work, which are going to be endergonic reactions. So if you remember, endergonic reactions are going to be anything that requires energy, and that's what a lot of the reactions in our body are going to be. So there's two ways that we can make ATP, and we'll talk about that in the next video.